Off the rugged coast of Nova Scotia lies a small forested landmass, no more than 140 acres in size, Oak Island, a place that would one day become synonymous with obsession, death, and the promise of unimaginable treasure. In the summer of 1795, a curious 16-year-old boy named Daniel McGinnis stumbled upon something peculiar. While wandering the island, he noticed a depression in the earth beneath a large oak tree, and above it, an old block and tackle hung ominously from a branch, weathered but clearly man-made. His heart quickened. The area had long been the subject of whispers, of pirates, of buried gold, of something lost and cursed. Unable to contain his excitement, he returned with two friends, Anthony Vaughan and John Smith, and they began to dig. Just a few feet into the soil, they encountered a layer of carefully laid flagstones, completely unnatural for the terrain. Beneath that, they discovered wooden platforms, timber logs placed horizontally every 10 feet, like an underground staircase vanishing into the unknown. With each new layer, their anticipation surged, but so did the labor. These young men had no machinery, only shovels and determination, but they knew what they had found was deliberate. It was a shaft, expertly engineered, its purpose unknown. As word spread throughout Nova Scotia and into New England, theories exploded into life. Some believed it to be the lost hoard of Captain Kidd. Others whispered of Blackbeard or even Spanish conquistadors hiding stolen relics from the New World. What no one could deny was this: someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury something, deep within the island's heart. Then came the first warnings. Locals began to claim the island was cursed. Strange accidents began to occur. Tools disappearing, shafts collapsing, diggers falling ill. Over time, the legend solidified into a terrifying prophecy. 7 men must die before the treasure is found. Whether born from fear or fact, it gripped the hearts of everyone who came near. Oak Island was no longer just a place. It was a puzzle designed to destroy those who tried to solve it. A place where history, greed, and superstition would collide for the next 2 centuries. As the 19th century dawned, Oak Island transformed from a local mystery into an international obsession. By 1804, a group of wealthy Nova Scotia investors, known as the Onslow Company, launched the first organized expedition to uncover the secret of what was now called the Money Pit. They resumed digging where McGinnis and his friends had left, often confirmed the continuing pattern of oak log platforms at regular 10-foot intervals. At a depth of 90 feet, their anticipation reached a fever pitch. Then, suddenly, the unthinkable happened. The pit flooded without warning, filling with freezing seawater faster than it could be bailed out. The excavation was over, halted by a force of nature no one understood. But soon, engineers and workers uncovered the terrible truth. It wasn't a natural flood. It was a booby trap. Subsequent attempts revealed a complex system of flood tunnels, cleverly constructed to channel water from the ocean, specifically from Smith's Cove, nearly 500 feet away. These tunnels were filled with eelgrass and coconut fibers, materials meant to act as natural filters. The coconut fiber, not native to Canada, could only have come from the tropics, which meant someone had shipped these materials thousands of miles just to protect the contents of this shaft. Whoever built the Money Pit hadn't just hidden something. They had engineered a masterpiece of deception, meant to last forever. Every time someone dug deep enough, the ocean itself would rise up to protect the secret. In 1849, the Truro Company brought a more scientific approach. They used drill borings to explore the shaft without physically entering it. At about 98 feet, the drill struck something strange: a layer of metal, then wood, and then more metal, suggesting a chest encased in wooden platforms, perhaps even multiple chests. The find electrified the team, but when they tried to reach it, the shaft again collapsed and flooded. Despite this setback, small objects were recovered from the borehole: a fragment of parchment with the letters Phi, or WI, specks of gold chain, and more foreign coconut fiber, all buried at impossible depths. No one could explain how such delicate items had ended up so far beneath the surface, or how the engineering had withstood more than a century of storms and digging. As the 19th century progressed, each new expedition poured in more money, more labor, and more belief. Yet every time they reached the brink of discovery, Oak Island pushed back. Collapses, drownings, toxic gases, many would be injured, and at least 6 would die. Still, they pressed on. The money pit wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a riddle that refused to be solved, a challenge left by an unknown civilization, an ancient order, or perhaps simply a cruel trick of fate. And still, beneath the collapsing shafts and layers of mud, something ancient waited. Silently. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the endless setbacks on Oak Island forced a shift in thinking. If the treasure remained elusive despite technology, manpower, and determination, then perhaps the answer didn't lie in the digging, but in the meaning, the history behind it all. That's when Oak Island moved from a story of pirates to something far older, deeper, and more mysterious. Theories multiplied, some grounded in archaeology, others in wild speculation. But all of them shared one thing: the belief that something of immense value and secrecy lay buried beneath Oak Island. One of the most enduring and captivating theories centered on the Knights Templar, the fabled order of warrior monks who rose to power during the Crusades and, according to legend, were the guardians of the Holy Grail, sacred relics, or even ancient forbidden knowledge. When the order was disbanded in 1307 by the Pope under pressure from the French crown, many Templars vanished into history, and their treasures were never found. Some believe a fleet of ships fled Europe, eventually reaching Nova Scotia, long before Columbus, and buried their sacred artifacts on Oak Island to keep them from falling into corrupt hands. Supporting this theory are the Templar-style crosses etched into stone found on the island, as well as structural alignments pointing toward Solomonic or Masonic geometry. Could it be that the money pit was not just a hiding place, but a sacred vault built by those sworn to eternal secrecy? Another possibility draws from Spanish colonial history. Some scholars argue that the treasure might not be medieval at all, but part of the vast wealth looted by Spanish conquistadors from the Americas. When ships were threatened by British pirates or storms, it's conceivable that a portion of this wealth was intentionally buried in a secure location. Oak Island, hidden among countless inlets, would have been the perfect place. But if this is true, why the traps? Why the layers? No Spanish treasure site ever involved such complex underwater engineering. And then there's the Shakespearean theory, perhaps the strangest of them all, yet oddly persistent. It begins with Francis Bacon, a 16th century English philosopher and writer, whom some believe was the true author of William Shakespeare's plays. According to this theory, Bacon used a secret society, possibly the Rosicrucians or early Freemasons, to encode and bury original manuscripts, ciphers, and ancient knowledge in a safe, unreachable vault. Proponents claim the mysterious cipher stone found at 90 feet was a Baconian code. If true, the money pit might not hold gold or jewels, but the original works of the world's greatest literary fraud, concealed to protect their controversial truths. Across these theories, Templar, Spanish, Baconian, one truth remained: the scale and complexity of the money pit's construction defied the capabilities of ordinary treasure barriers. It hinted at an intelligence, a purpose, that far exceeded simple greed. Something was hidden here, and it was meant to stay hidden, for centuries, if not forever. The dawn of the 20th century saw Oak Island drift between hope and despair. As technology evolved, so did the ambitions of treasure hunters. Powerful corporations and wealthy adventurers joined the search, bringing drills, pumps, steel reinforcements, and even dynamite in a desperate attempt to breach the money pit's defenses. But the island responded like a living entity. Every time a shaft was dug, it collapsed, flooded, or worse, claimed lives. In the 1920s, a New York-based syndicate attempted to freeze the water-filled pit using liquid nitrogen. The plan failed catastrophically, and equipment was lost forever in the mud. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, more attempts followed. Digging shifted not just around the original pit, but across the island, at Smith's Cove, Hatch Shaft, Borehole 10X, names that would later become famous among Oak Island fanatics. Yet despite massive financial losses, no treasure surfaced. Until 1965, tragedy struck with full force. 4 men died, 2 brothers and 2 workers, after descending into a newly dug shaft. A buildup of toxic hydrogen sulfide gas suffocated them. The legend's curse had claimed its 6th life, and Oak Island's reputation as a deadly enigma deepened. Families were left shattered, and questions turned to fear. Yet, even this horror could not stop the flow of treasure hunters. Through the 1970s and 1980s, Dan Blankenship, a Florida contractor turned obsessed explorer, took the lead. His efforts led to the famous Borehole 10X, a steel-reinforced shaft that reached over 230 feet deep. Using sonar and cameras, his team claimed to have seen images of chests, tools, and even a severed human hand in a submerged chamber. But the camera failed, the shaft caved in, and skeptics dismissed the footage. Still, for Dan, Oak Island had become more than a mystery. It was a lifelong commitment, and it would consume him for decades. At this point, the island's tale began to attract a different kind of interest: media and entertainment. Articles in Reader's Digest and other popular publications introduced Oak Island to the wider world. It became a magnet for curiosity, drawing in amateur historians, engineers, codebreakers, and conspiracy theorists. Some believed the treasure had already been removed. Others claimed it was a hoax from the start. But one fact kept everyone returning. No one had ever reached the bottom. No one knew what lay beyond the 200-foot mark. By the end of the 20th century, Oak Island had devoured fortunes, taken lives, and yielded no definitive answers. Yet hope endured. In an age of satellites and supercomputers, this tiny, storm-washed island still refused to give up its secret. It had become more than a treasure hunt. It was an obsession, a symbol of the human need to uncover what lies buried, beneath the soil, beneath time, and beneath belief itself. For over 2 centuries, Oak Island had seduced treasure hunters and crushed their hopes in equal measure. The mystery endured, but it had grown quiet, almost mythic, more legend than living pursuit. That changed in the early 2000s when a childhood dream, kindled by a single magazine article, reignited the world's obsession. In the 1960s, a young boy named Rick Lagina, growing up in Michigan, came across a Reader's Digest article titled Oak Island's Mysterious Money Pit. The piece was short, but to Rick it was a thunderbolt. He was captivated by the idea of a booby-trapped pit, flooded with seawater, hiding an unknown treasure no man had ever touched. Decades passed. Rick became a postal worker. His brother, Marty Lagina, pursued energy and engineering, eventually becoming a self-made millionaire. But the dream never died. And in 2006, the 2 brothers purchased a controlling stake in Oak Island, acquiring the land and the legend with their own money. Unlike their predecessors, the Laginas weren't content with stories or half-truths. They brought science, logic, and engineering to an island that had defied both. Their approach was methodical. They used ground-penetrating radar, seismic scanning, drone surveys, and core sampling, all to create a 3D map of the subsurface world no eye had ever seen. And as cameras began to roll for what would become the long-running History Channel series The Curse of Oak Island, the brothers shared their quest with the world, drawing millions into the hunt. Soon, the discoveries began to mount. In and around the infamous Money Pit, researchers uncovered fragments of human bone, an iron cross believed to be of Knights Templar origin, ancient Roman coins, and lead with a chemical signature traced to southern France and the Middle East. Some pieces predated European settlement in North America by centuries. Every find deepened the enigma. What civilization or secret order had been here? And why had they buried something so deep, so elaborately protected, and so far from their homelands? Perhaps most shockingly, seismic data revealed enormous underground voids, cave-like chambers, and man-made tunnels extending over 200 feet beneath the surface. Within these voids, sonar images suggested the presence of box-like structures and metallic anomalies, potential chests or relics entombed in stone. But reaching them remained a monumental challenge. The shafts collapsed. Water returned. The island resisted, just as it always had. Yet the Laginas pressed on, not for fame, not even necessarily for treasure, but because they believed that something profoundly historic lay waiting to be found. Their efforts represented a new era of exploration, a fusion of ancient riddle and modern science, folklore and fact. For the first time in centuries, the legend of Oak Island wasn't fading, it was growing stronger. By now, Oak Island was no longer just a Nova Scotian curiosity. It was a global phenomenon, its story broadcast into millions of homes across the world. The legend had taken root not only in history books and treasure maps, but in popular culture, internet forums, and academic discussions. It became a mirror, reflecting our deepest desires to uncover, to explain, to conquer the unknowable. But why, after all this time and failure, do people still care? Perhaps because Oak Island is not just a physical place, but a psychological one. The deeper you dig, both literally and metaphorically, the more it says about human nature, about obsession, about faith, about our relentless belief that what's buried can always be uncovered if only we go one layer deeper. For some, the island represents a lost chapter of world history, a missing link in the timeline of civilization. The implications of what might be buried there are staggering. Proof of pre-Columbian transoceanic travel, of ancient knowledge suppressed by empires, of religious artifacts hidden away to preserve their sanctity or danger. For others, it's simply the most sophisticated and enduring puzzle humanity has ever tried to solve. The legend has also found resonance in spiritual and esoteric circles. The 7 deaths, tied to the curse. The repeated appearance of the number 13. The alleged Masonic symbols. Some theorists believe Oak Island is less a treasure vault than a time capsule of spiritual enlightenment, encoded by secret societies that believed the truth could only be revealed when the world was ready. And yet, for all the mysticism, Oak Island is still raw earth, cold seawater, and relentless mud. There is no Hollywood climax. There is no final reveal. The legend endures precisely because the final answer remains just out of reach. We don't know what's buried at 200 feet. Only that it was meant to stay hidden. In this way, Oak Island stands alone. It is not a story about gold, though gold may lie beneath. It is a story about belief, about the centuries of hands that dug and died in the name of a mystery, about the modern men who continue their search not for riches, but for meaning. And in that sense, the greatest treasure of Oak Island may not be what lies underground, but what it reveals about us, our dreams, our limits, and our unwillingness to ever stop searching. At the heart of every legend lies a question, not just about what happened, but why it matters. For over 200 years, men and women have risked their fortunes, their reputations, and even their lives digging into Oak Island's stubborn soil. Some were driven by greed, others by curiosity, but all shared one thing: the belief that somewhere beneath this unremarkable patch of land lies something extraordinary. And yet, after all this time, no definitive treasure has been recovered. Not a crown, not a grail, not even a confirmed chest of gold. The cameras have captured moments of wonder, and the drills have touched fragments of history, but the great reveal still hasn't come. So why then does the search continue? Why do the Lagina brothers keep returning each season? Why does the world still watch? Because Oak Island has evolved into something more profound than a treasure hunt. It has become a symbol of humanity's eternal quest for truth, the kind of truth that can't be measured in silver or weighed in doubloons. The real story is not what might be buried underground, but what has been uncovered above it. Generations of human passion, perseverance, and the unshakable belief that mystery is worth chasing. The island teaches us that not all answers are quick, or clean, or even complete. That patience, not dynamite, is the real tool of discovery. That every failure, every collapsed tunnel, every false alarm is still a step closer to understanding not just a place, but an idea. And in that idea, of buried secrets, ancient engineers, forbidden knowledge, lies the true treasure: imagination, hope, legacy. Some now speculate that the original treasure may have already been removed, taken centuries ago, leaving only the shell of the trap behind. Others argue that there never was a treasure, just a brilliant deception, a test of greed versus resolve. And yet what Oak Island has already given humanity may be more precious than any artifact. It has preserved wonder in an age that's forgotten how to believe. Even science, which the Laginas have wielded with precision, cannot fully conquer the island. The ground shifts, the water floods, the stone remains silent. It's almost as if the island chooses what to reveal, and to whom. It has become a living riddle, more story than soil, more symbol than substance. In the end, when we ask, what lies 200 feet down, the most haunting answer may be this: ourselves, our ambition, our fears, our dreams. Oak Island is a mirror buried in the earth, reflecting back what we're willing to risk for the promise of something greater. And as long as someone believes in that promise, the digging will never stop, not because of what might be found, but because of what might be true.